All right, welcome to um, what is going to be me explaining the uh, the new graph I've got set up. It's a very important topic. New philosophy just dropped. The unbinding unto into emulsion. Um, it's going to be hard. It looks complicated, but it's really quite simple. Okay, so first off, we got to start with the supreme idea, right? This is where you start. So the supreme idea, I've represented it here as a pizza, a supreme pizza. It's on a platter, right? So there's a bunch of different ways we can go with this from the supreme idea, and the supreme idea meaning, you know, the idea or the unconscious kind of like thought, right? Or the first idea, the supreme idea being the first, the best, So the idea of the universe, not the universe itself, but the idea of the universe, right? And before it was even made, right? And so there's two ways we can go with this. So one way we can go onto the becoming, or we can go increasing explicitness. Both of those are very similar. So we'll first go with the increase. We'll go up and then we'll go down, and then we'll see how going up is going down leads to going up. So first off, we see the smell coming out. That's just the reflective dissonance of the idea, right? Just it's like the smell. It's almost like the receptiveness of the supreme idea, right? It's like the shadow, right? So the shadow shows and gives form to the supreme idea. We don't know its form without its shadow, or without its reflective dissonance. So that's why the smell rises up and increases the explicitness of the supreme idea. Now, um, as we go up, you know, as we increase our explicitness, we move over to these rings, right? The procedural, the episodic, and the semantic. Um, this could be called a thought elevator, as it moves over to the highest crown. But just think of it like this: this is a part of the increasing explicitness, where you have a procedural supreme idea is becoming more clear, right? These rings of the procedural become their form starts to break, so we can see the trueness of the idea as we rise up and increase our explicitness. So we move from the procedural stage of the idea to the episodic stage, where we can understand through multiple different episodes, if you will. And then the semantic. That's when we're our understanding and the explicitness of the supreme idea is very clear. Yes, we can see it, and we can see in this form, and we can then call it different names through semantics. So this all equates to the thought elevator. This rising explicitness of the thought elevator to your highest crown. The highest crown being, of course, your brain, right? So we we've kind of covered that, right? So let's talk further about. So we moved up the thought elevator. So that was pretty easy. So let's move a different way. Let's move to the right and then down. That's where we're going to go next. So let's start once again at the supreme idea. We've talked about increasing explicitness. So there's two different things, you know, we're seeing here. So the supreme idea in becoming, this is the supreme idea. Remember, I had said this is almost like, in this sense, is a new wavelength of thought or of like the universe. It's like the creation of the universe, but not the actual idea, or it's not the actual action, but the idea of it. And so in becoming it, this arrow here, we go through barriers of love and hate, and other psychic barriers, which are represented here as teeth. So think of the idea has to be digested, right? And you have to eat it, your digestive saliva and all that. So we'll carry on that in just a second, but I got to cover these other things. So buried away, the influx of eternity. That's just your boogers, right? So nothing more need to be said really there. The window of the soul, of course, is your eyeball. You can stare straight into someone's soul. So this action and reaction is you're sniffing, through your nose, the reflective dissonance of the supreme idea. You're starting to understand, and this combined with the window of your soul seeing into the supreme idea, this all this kind of corresponds to the thought elevator and the highest crown. Now, I've put labeled here God or the law right here. So the reason I did that is because the supreme idea in becoming has to go through these stages by God to get to these next stages going down, which we'll get to. But so, um, but the reason why I put the law is because, excuse me, sorry. Um, the reason why I put the law is because you can also think of the supreme idea as the new ideology or new ideology going forward. And so so the supreme idea could be like this sort of transcendence, a new idea that has to be interpreted in the wavelength of the law, which this is you almost, you're God, right? You're the law, or if you want to be more broad, society, right? So it has to go through these barriers, the psychic barriers, love and hate, everything we talked about with the supreme idea, and that creates the unconscious I. So what that means is so once in the art of becoming, the supreme idea is going through these barriers, these, how would you say, almost lively events and pains, struggles, hardships, hate, hatred, love, all these different things, and forming itself, it's understanding itself. So if you want to take the supreme idea as an ideology, it goes through the bear, and becoming, it has to go through, people support and people, uh, the political process of support and not support and stuff like that, and other barriers. But if you interpret the supreme idea as yourself, then that means in your own art of becoming that you have to go through the lips. It's metaphorical, of course. The love and hate and other psychic barriers to then self-actualize yourself and to create your unconscious you. This is you. Just this is your beginning, right? So this, as it goes down, as the pizza goes down your throat, right? This then leads to a well, I've typified here as a genocide run. Well, now what does that mean? Okay. It sounds scary, but it doesn't unless you interpret this being, or, if you're thinking of the supreme idea is the creation universe or whatever, and becoming that, the universe, God had to digest the idea of it and, form it, right? That means there's some hardship along the way. So why is this? The unbinding part is basically this part right here. So the supreme idea had to be disseminated down, basically, and sort of think about it like it has to be destroyed a little bit. It had to be broken up and broken apart to be, how would you say, seen in the more, or perceived as it should be perceived, as we perceive it now. So the supreme idea, we don't know what the supreme idea looks like. I mean, I've just represented it as a pizza. It could be a pizza, I don't know. But the point is, I've only represented it as a pizza, and its creation and its art of becoming. This whole arc downwards is the art of its becoming. This genocide run just means its destruction or its unbinding or dissemination, if you will, of the idea. And so, what does that leads to? I've shown it here as Earth, which is our material existence, aka the gate of heaven. I mean, that's just what I've called it. Why is it called the gate of heaven? Well, the gate of heaven is also the gate of hell because it's two ways you can go from material existence, right? So first off, you can do another unbinding, uh, into emulsion, which is hell. It's the genocide run, right? So remember how I said this is genocide run, meaning dissemination, the breaking apart, and the restructuring and the destruction of the supreme idea, so we can perceive it as it should, as we do perceive. This means that once again, this the material existence, which is now just a mere reflection of the supreme idea, has been disseminated even further, or destroyed, compounded even further, which then of course just means hell, hell on earth, or however you want to really state it. So, but the unbinding into emulsion is really important. So that's why it's in parentheses, the into part, because this is more important. So the earth, or material existence, the gate of heaven. So the gate opens. It opens both. Usually a door, I like to think, opens both ways, right? And so that's why I've called it the gate of heaven, because a gate can open this way, it can open that way. So when we're opening, well, it doesn't really matter which way we're opening, but one way is the to hell, the other way is to heaven. But we'll get there. We'll get there. So think of the material existence as the earth. So through paradoxical synchronism and symbols. Now, what does that mean? Well, hold on. That's how we start to self-transcend and to go further than it's almost like a recreation of the creation of the unconscious I, but in a different way. So paradoxical synchronism and symbols, all this is meaning is that we are giving ideas that are not the supreme idea symbols and representation, and right, and through these ideas that are being represented by symbols, and the paradoxical synchronism of things happening at the same time but not happening at the same time, that is how we get to this reality of birthing oneself in the Orphic egg. So this Orphic egg, I've depicted as the Pokemon egg, is just for easy of representation. So this Orphic egg is almost, remember I said it's like a recreation of the own creation. So in doing that, you're like shielding yourself. This is almost like you're reforming and reiterating yourself. So remember when I talked about how the genocide run was the breaking down of the world, right? And the breaking down and the disseminating of the supreme idea. However, in this other way, it is almost like a reforming of the supreme idea. We're starting to understand it's like an elevation of your thought, the thought elevator, right? It's an elevation, crystallization of your consciousness. And so, why is Satan here? I mean, he's the great antagonizer to some. He's just an important figure. All right, he's he's watching the whole way, and he and God play a big role in this creation. So if there's multiple interpretations you can have of this. One interpretation you could have is Satan is trying to stop you from birthing yourself through the Orphic and reimagining yourself to get to heaven. Basically, this is you might think of this as you die and then you go to heaven, right? This is a one way to interpret, a one way to interpret it. So, but there's other ways you can interpret it as is Satan leading you to heaven by showing you, if you see him as a deceiver, by showing you the wrongness, or right, or whatever, as being this figure of sin, then he's showing you he's being separated basically from you. Yeah, you being within the egg, right? And he's separate from you because you've separated yourself from sin. Now, going forward, right, you could also interpret this as he's protecting you, because Satan, if not, is just, in some interpretations, could be just God, one of God's agents. So he's created by God, so God has to know, what's up. So he's protecting you, shielding you from material forces. Because remember, God, if in some some people would say that God has left you already because Jesus has come to and all these other things. But where do you pray and you ask for God? But where is He? We don't know. So in this way, the only thing that remains in this the material existence is the idea of these things, and so Satan here represents the I is an I is just representing another idea that may be shielding you, or maybe also be something separate from yourself, right? So because you have to separate yourself from others, you have to become this is a whole art of becoming yourself and birthing yourself by reimagining, right? You have to reimagine and reinvent yourself to move on from stress, trauma, and other things, right? You have to rebuild yourself from the ground up through symbols, things that you want to represent yourself as, but at the same time, paradoxically, that you don't want to represent yourself as. So this is a whole reimagining. This leads you to what I've typed as a new earth or bliss, aka heaven, which is just remember the gate opens two ways, right? So it's just so the reason why. Now let me zoom this out so you can get a whole picture, right? The reason why what's very interesting here about this chart that I've made, figure 13 by the way, is that if you could extrapolate and understand material existence or the gate of heaven, as the supreme idea, these could be two. This is just remember a reflective dissonance going. It's the smell, right? But it goes both ways, right? And so the supreme idea could be this material existence we live in. And so the art and the increasing explicitness of yourself and moving up the thought elevator of reimagining yourself leads you to the highest crown, bliss, you know, or you yourself becoming or being God of heaven, right? And to your own salvation. You have to save yourself. There's no one around to save you anymore. It's all about pulling yourself up by your damn boots. No, just okay. But no, seriously, you have. It's this whole journey is a psycho spiritual kinetic journey of you reimagining yourself, and through increasingly explicitness you understand yourself, and you're separating yourself from others. You're not depending on other people for your own worth. It is you reimagining yourself as yourself. So remember with this creation, I said this is like this right here was like the recreation of the unconscious I. This whole process of the increasing explicitness and reimagining of yourself is, if anything, should be labeled the creation of the conscious I. You finally, once you get to bliss or heaven, you finally understand yourself. You've come to accept yourself separate from other people. And that's really just, that's really it. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this thought. uh, I hope your thoughts have been elevated by this. I mean, I think it's very good. Sorry for the scuffed video setup, but yeah, I'll catch you around. And maybe I'll have more to explain in the future. But I hope you new philosophy just dropped. Um, I made this, and it's very very coherent, and it's really easy to understand. I think if once you break it down, you can understand it. So, um, that's it. Hope you like. Bye.